A domain expansion is the most supreme form of Jujutsu sorcery, an advanced barrier technique that constructs the user's innate domain employed with the user's curse technique. In the past, a domain was the perfect way for a sorcerer to gain control over a territory and handicap their opponent. But in recent years, domain expansions have evolved to include a one-hit KO factor as well. Considered the pinnacle of sorcery, not just any character is capable of casting a domain. Even grade 1 sorcerers like Hanami Kento are unable to reach that level of power. The cast of sorcerers that are capable of domain sits at a number of 17, half of the roster including cursed spirits or sorcerers reborn from a past era. In the modern day, the number is as few as 6 sorcerers. On top of that, there are some known users that have only been teased, either interrupting before casting or hinted at having the domain expansion but just never activating it. Today, I want to focus on the select few candidates that weren't able to show us their full domains and speculate what their innate techniques could have been. This video was sponsored by my best grade members, who voted on this idea. Thank you very much for your constant support of the channel, and you all make more of a difference than you know. Without further ado, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get right into it. The cursed spirit of nature. Hanami was the only one of the 4 disaster curses not to reveal their domain. Although it's not like they didn't try to. Way back in the exchange event arc, as Hanami interrupted the students' tournament and pushed all of the young sorcerers to their limits. The 2 prodigies, Aoi Todo and Itadori Yuji, are able to beat the curse back against the wall, after both Boogie Woogie and Playful Cloud push Hanami to use its domain expansion. Satoru Gojo shatters the curtain, trapping the students inside with Hanami, causing the curse to instantly stop the cast and realize they need to get the fuck out of here. However, from what was shown, we can easily imply that Hanami's domain, or more specifically, the one-hit kill factor, revolved around some kind of energy beam. It's almost impossible not to make a solar beam reference here. After placing her previously hidden and bandaged arm onto the ground, Hanami absorbs the life force from all the plant life in the area. The soil, trees, and grass all die, sacrificing their souls to the curse, who instead of healing and regenerating with his drained power, converts all of it with the rose on its shoulder into pure cursed energy. The eye inside of the blooming rose opens as it begins to conjure a massive, electrifying orb of power. One can assume from this point, Hanami would then create the necessary barrier in order to trap their opponent inside and ensure the attack meets its mark. Whether the barrier is constructed with tree branches and nature, or is just a pure black barrier much like a curtain, is uncertain. Hanami's other curse techniques were shown to include the flower field that robs an opponent of their will to fight, and curse buds that would suck the cursed energy directly from a target until they're bled dry. While both of these attacks could potentially be used as an innate technique inside the domain, i.e. causing an opponent to freeze up and permanently become disillusioned from the fight due to pheromones, or Hanami, after trapping their opponent inside the domain, is able to drain their opponent of their life force as well. Based off of what we witnessed during Hanami's almost cast of domain against Todo, it seems more likely to be trap inside, fire big solar beam move, and then you die. R.I.P. Hanami. Ishigori Ryu is a reincarnated player in the culling game, originally born about 600 years from the present day of the series. Known throughout history as the sorcerer with the largest ever cursed energy output, even with multiple ages passing, not a single person has ever broken Ishigori's record power levels. In his current vessel, Ishigori uses this high output to fire cursed energy projectiles in the form of blasts or beams, capable of launching large volleys or concentrated lasers from the pompadour styled onto his head. He's also capable of buffing up his physical stats thanks to his massive energy, which puts him on a level rivaling Okotsuyuta, a sorcerer with the exact opposite cursed energy feats. Ishigori's domain expansion is casted and then cancelled due to a 3-way clash essentially being impossible due to the vast differences between multiple barriers and innate abilities. Kurorushi breaking into the tug of war definitely didn't help either. And frankly, out of the 3, Ishigori's the hardest to pin down. Without showing any real unique technique outside of high-powered energy bursts, it's safe to assume any innate ability activated inside of Ishigori's domain expansion would revolve around those critical output levels. And when you take into consideration that one-hit kill techniques are a much more modern trend, not as prevalent in the olden days of sorcery due to their colossal cost in cursed energy and inefficiency when it comes to long-term fights or sorcerers who have domains of their own, it's actually pretty easy to see how the output could fit into a non-insta-kill domain expansion. Imagine Ishigori's domain, after casting a barrier, increases his attack power and defense even further. Perhaps a similar effect to Hikari's jackpot even, where the cursed energy flow is so heightened, the body instantly heals with auto-reverse curse technique. This may allow Ishigori access to 200% output granite blasts. Or perhaps, if we were to get a bit more creative, because Ishigori would have full control over the territory, what if he can even shoot the granite blast from anywhere inside the barrier, ignoring one-hit KOs not being common in the past? If we were to give Ishigori a one-hit KO, the most simple and ideal would be creating the barrier and surrounding the opponent in hundreds of thousands of actual fucking cannons, and then just letting loose. That's one non-lethal and one lethal domain. Sadly, we'll never find out what Ishigori's domain actually was, as he was chopped into bits by the King of Curses as Sukuna made his way to the Sendai Stadium. Another reincarnated player of the culling game that also gets her debut fighting Yuta in Sendai Colony. Takako Yoro is actually reborn from the Heian era over 1,000 years ago. A captain in the Sun, Moon, and Stars squad serving under the Fujiwara clan, Yoro reigned at a much more violent time in the sorcerer world. A signature of the times, Yoro chooses to forego clothing, although her curse technique still allows her to cover up what's important at least. Takako Yoro's ability is known as sky manipulation, which she uses to levitate through the air and manipulate the space around her. Similar to a lens distortion, Yoro turns the sky into a tangible surface that can be freely grabbed or warped, distorting her own attacks to change their shape or even messing with her opponents in order to defend. While unable to outright crush her opponent directly, Yoro is able to apply pressure to the surface of the sky, causing it to break like a thin layer of ice, the impact of which implodes off of her opponent's body and causes significant damage. This method allows Yoro to pierce through any defense that may have been set up. Yoro's domain expansion was also interrupted due to the Triple Clash and Kurarushi's break-in. She is also our first candidate to still be alive, so it's possible we may still see this in the future. And compared to Ishigori, who mostly fired laser beams from his hair for 8 chapters, Yoro's domain expansion most likely stems off of her source technique, sky manipulation. After creating a barrier around her opponent, due to Yoro's older style of sorcery, a non-lethal domain is a possibility. However, as seen with other Heian-era sorcerers like Sukuna with his Malevolent Shrine, or Yorozu and her threefold affliction, both of which have a one-hit kill technique associated with the domain, the more treacherous and dark age that is the Heian era may influence these sorcerers to have a much more violent innate technique. That being said, I think that it would make sense that being outside of any small spaces, Yoro is incapable of crushing opponents with her space manipulation, but perhaps inside of a domain, this changes. After closing her opponent inside of a barrier, perhaps Yoro can take the space and instantly turn her opponent inside out. Or, as seen when Yoro hand-to-hand fights with Yuta, once a decent amount of distance away, any distorted or warped limbs return to normal, as if no damage or harm was done. With even more control over the realm the two individuals inhabited, perhaps Yoro's domain allows her to actually bend an opponent's body as she wishes, twisting and contorting them into shapes beyond repair. But this time, actual damage is done. Irreversible, bone-snapping damage. Whatever kind of control Yoro would have over space inside of her domain, I'm sure it would allow her to do insane damage to her opponent. An assassin born in the infamous era of bloody sorcery, Takako Yoro without a doubt has a full-on one-hit kill domain expansion in my mind. That again is still possible we may get to see, although she does seem terrified of Sukuna, who was implied to have beaten her back in the past. Right now, Yoro's busy MIA, cowering in fear. Golden Boy himself, the cursed child, and the second coming of the prodigy sorcerer, Okotsuyuta is a fan favorite character, and someone a lot of people would be upset about not witnessing his domain before the end of the story. I'm hoping we can all look back on this video one day and talk about how right or wrong I was trying to predict this domain expansion. A powerful special grade sorcerer from the modern era, supposedly second only to Satoru Gojo. Okotsuyuta's primary curse technique is copy. This technique allows him to, after consuming an undisclosed amount of a person's DNA or cursed energy, mimic said person's ability. Yuta has been shown doing this even with inherited curse techniques that require facial markings, like the Inumaki clan's curse speech, or even immediately after ingesting the required sample, such as when Yuta copies Yoro's sky manipulation technique moments after Rika devours her arm. The current iteration of Yuta is unable to access these copied curse techniques without first synchronizing with Rika's left behind apparition, who acts as a storage unit for these abilities, as well as curse tools and other items. Okotsu is then given 5 minutes to utilize these techniques and fight alongside a fully manifested Rika in special grade curse spirit form. It's unknown if this synchronization must be in effect for Yuta to activate his domain expansion or not. One of the 3 domains interrupted by that 3-way clash, and Kurorushi, Okotsu's domain expansion must have something to do with his ability to mirror others. It's completely possible this domain might just be a simple removal of the 5-minute time frame, granting Yuta unlimited access to all of his copied abilities and curse tools all at once, giving him the ability to apply unlimited pressure onto an opponent with a myriad of crazy different attacks and tricks. But what if Yuta's domain focused more on the whole mirror aspect of things, literally constructing a hall of mirrors to surround an opponent in that reflects any and all attacks inside the domain? Something similar maybe to Haku's crystal ice mirrors, where Yuta can pop in and out using his different techniques, or as mentioned before, ricochets his or his opponent's attacks repeatedly around the barrier to cause consistent damage. Or, for a third and final possibility, we could take mirror literally and say Okotsu's domain creates an actual full-on clone of his opponent that they must defeat, whether the clone is a full recreation that battles back, or it's just Yuta taking the form of the opponent. It could even be extended to one person going up against 100 clones of themselves. The copy technique's full realization into a one-hit kill ability could truly be anything. All of this assumes Yuta's domain expansion has nothing to do with Rika, as she was shown initially to be left out of the domain clash between the 3 sorcerers. But I'm sure if she offered any kind of backup, it would just make the domain expansion even more OP. Imagine just being able to shapeshift Rika, or a clone or special grade form, and getting stuck inside a barrier with that monstrosity, fighting hundreds of Rikas, or like I said, Rika shapeshifting into different creatures, weapons, or whatever for Yuta to use inside of the domain, accompanied with all of the different copied curse techniques. The possibilities inside of Yuta's domain are endless, giving it all the more guarantee it's gonna be insanely powerful when we do see it, if we see it. Another special grade from the modern era, Yuki Sakumo is even a senior to Satoru Gojo and Suguru Geto, making her wise and highly experienced as a sorcerer, especially considering Yuki tends to blow off her Jujutsu high responsibilities in favor of traveling the world and learning all she can about the soul. Being a former Star Plasma vessel, Yuki is very skeptical of Jujutsu society as a whole, and thus kept most of her developments as a sorcerer, as well as her curse technique in general, a secret from the higher-ups. Although, considering she was granted the rank of special grade, they were at least aware that if she so willed it, Yuki Sakumo could challenge an entire nation with her sorcery. When finally revealed in her battle against Kenjaku, Yuki's curse technique, Wrath of the Stars, or depending on your translation, Bambaye, gives Yuki the ability to manipulate her own mass. By giving herself virtual mass, Yuki is able to significantly increase the amount of power coming off of her body at any given time, making a simple punch seem like it was coming from that of a colossal giant. This allows Yuki to accomplish feats like ripping off both of Kenjaku's arms from his elbows with one punch. Her Shikigami Garuda can also be used as an extension of this technique, being employed with virtual mass of its own for her partner's attacks, like when Yuki kicks Garuda like a soccer ball at Kenjaku's summoned curse spirit. The combined added mass between both entities would be enough to defy concepts and cause the spirit to rip apart into pieces. Although the curse technique can only be applied to herself or Garuda. Yuki admits that she must be constantly aware of the physical limits and capabilities her ability can realistically hold, for if she overdoes it, Yuki is actually capable of breaking reality. This one fact is most likely what designates her as a special grade, this cautionary tale being witnessed to its fullest when Yuki decides to sacrifice herself in order to take out Kenjaku, summoning so much mass onto herself that space itself collapses inwards, creating an actual black hole that would have destroyed the entire planet itself had its destructive force not been held back by both Lord Tengen's first-rate barrier abilities and the sheer tenacity of Yuki Sakumo herself. Yuki's domain expansion would clearly be an extension of the Bombaye technique itself, increasing the range of its mass manipulation from Yuki and Garuda themselves to everything within Sakumo's barrier. From enclosement, Yuki would be able to add large amounts of weight to an opponent, causing them to collapse. The severity of the said added mass would be completely up to Yuki, holding the power to make her domain a one-hit kill or not, depending on what she wants out of her opponent. This mass, although not affecting size, can be skyrocketed or plummeted according to Yuki's will, meaning an opponent, inversely from being crushed under their own weight, could be imploded and turned inwards with their own mass, creating a much more contained black hole from the victim that instantly closes itself after the domain ends. Whether or not Yuki would be safe from that attack is up to you. In fact, how cool would it be if Yuki was one of the only sorcerers to be able to close an opponent inside a domain expansion by themselves, forcing them to undergo black hole status while Yuki just sits outside of the barrier waiting for the whole ordeal to be over. In the one and only battle she was featured in, Yuki chose not to use her domain expansion in order to efficiently space out her cursed energy for the fight. Their plan to exhaust Kenjaku after he used his domain and then beat him down with everything they have afterwards didn't fit into Sakumo actually casting that domain. By the time it would have even occurred to her, it was already too late. It was do or die time. And another great sorcerer leaves us too soon, without showing us everything they're capable of. And that was all 5 characters known to have domain expansions that we were unable to see. Are there any ideas you had that I missed? Let me know in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, and if you want a chance to give me a video idea, consider hitting that join button and being one of my best grade members. Thank you for watching, click an end screen video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.